In this video, I'm going to show you how I airbrushed a skull buried in some granite. Let's get into it right now. So I'm going to use this pencil to draw a basic skull design. You can start off with a circle. I want it almost to be a bit cartoony. Now using a Sharpie, I'm just going to outline this design. As you can see, it's a very basic skull. It doesn't have to be anything too detailed because I want to make it look like it's carved into the stone. And the paper I'm using is just photo paper, so it's a bit thicker. That way it'll work better for my template. Now I'm just going to use a hobby knife to cut out the design and make my loose paper stencil. Now with the teeth, try and keep a gap between them. You'll see why in a minute. Because if I didn't do this, if I didn't have that space, then this whole part of the tooth would fall out and I wouldn't have that join. So you kind of work on the inside of your Sharpie mark. You can see I'm just rolling the knife when I want to go around corners. You can also get swivel blades, but I just find this works just as well. Don't worry if your teeth aren't perfect. It is a skull, so it doesn't really matter. And that's why skulls are so good to do. Even though they look cool, at least if you do make a mistake, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. You can sort of hide it or turn it into something else. And now I'm just going to cut around the perimeter. And I would keep that attached like so. So you can see because I've cut right down on these sections here, that's allowing that to move forward. So we've got the positive and the negative mask now. So I'm just going to add some black paint into my airbrush. Now I'm running this paint a bit thicker. I have already put some reducer in the base of this cup and I've just poured in the black, and now I'm just going to put my finger over the front, give that a quick mix, and this will run a thicker paint for the spatters. In order to build up a granite look on this canvas, I'm using a spatter tool. So this is a stretcher tool that you can use to stretch out your canvas, and this works really well for spattering. You can also use a wooden peg. Anything that has a porous finish will work. And what you do is you angle your airbrush down. You can see I've removed my air cap, so just be careful when you're doing this so that you don't damage your needle. But I have the needle almost touching and on a bit of an angle. You can see it's sort of like a 45-degree angle, and what will happen is the further to the front that you are with your airbrush, the finer the spatters, and the further back that you go, the larger the spatters. So you can control the thickness, and what happens is the paint builds up on that surface and then it ricochets off onto your painting. And I'm going to be spattering with black first and then white. And this is just a canvas 200 by 200 mil, or just under 8 by 8 inches. So I'm going to do a basic fog first, just to darken off the canvas. Can be nice and uneven, that's fine. And then using my spatter tool, you can see I'm getting some heavier spatters there. And go up closer, I'll get a finer grain. This takes just a little bit of practice, so don't get disheartened if you don't get it straight away. But once you master this, you can totally control where those spatters are going to end up. For really big ones, you want a nice decent amount, and then some finer ones as well. You can see I'm building it up because I'm going to run my white spatters on top, so I want a fairly dark base so that they show up. So I'm just going to dust the sides a little bit just to darken them off. Now doing the same thing with white, make sure that the black spatters are dry. Again, angle your airbrush down, pulling back on the trigger to create the spatters. And now we're getting a bit of spattering happening. So to fast track your learning, you can definitely check out our online airbrushing course at airbrushasilum.thinkific.com. The white sits nicely on top of the black, and you can see after that white the overspray has kind of muted some of the granite. So I'm going to go back over with some black just to get a bit more of the spatters coming through a bit heavier, and then I can always go back over with white again. So just keep going back and forth as many times as you need to until you're happy with the texture. And then back with the white. It's better now. A bit grainier. Now just got to let it dry. You can use the air from your airbrush to dry it. Just make sure that none of the spatters are too thick or wet. Don't go up too close because otherwise you will disperse them. Okay, now using the paper template, I'm going to lay that over my canvas. You can see I've marked sort of the center so I can line that up. And I'm going to assume that my light source is up here. For the shading on the black, I'm going to use a transparent black. So this is transparent base mixed with black. If you don't have transparent base, you can just over thin your black and that'll also work. Now keeping in mind that my light source is here, I want to darken off the top left. So shade around this area here, blend that out, and on this side and under the nostril, this nostril. Now remember, I'm trying to make this appear to look like the skull is carved into the granite. And now with the teeth, again, the light source is there. So basically on the same side as the light source will be a darker tone. Now this is because I want it to look like it's in the granite. If you were making it look like it's sitting on top as a 3D object, then you would do it opposite. Usually then the highlight would be here. But in this case, even with the border of the skull, you can see the eyes are starting to sink in a bit. But on here, I'm going to run a shadow along here. Again, fairly dark around that edge, and then again along here. And then this side will get the highlight, and it'll also pick up on this edge here. So again, now the highlight's going to kick up on this edge. And just building that white slowly. It'll take a bit of time to get it nice and bright. And along here. And then on the nostrils, the other one, and then you can see it's starting to look like it's really pressed in there. And then with the teeth, same thing. I'm going to hit that lower edge. Now flip this down, and I'm going to come along here, highlight along this edge. Keeping the air on at all times, just pulling back for paint. A little bit of a highlight on this edge. So you can do this with anything. It can be done with lettering, images like this, doesn't matter what it is. And now if I remove this, you can see we've got a more three-dimensional looking skull. And now I can come in freehand. Just hit these areas above the teeth. And now I'm going to start to break it up a little bit with some cracks. So on this edge here, pull some cracks off there, just doing some fine lines. can deepen some of these shadows around the teeth just by using my airbrush freehand. You can have some thicker cracks going into thinner ones. Again, I like to come along that edge and just deepen that shadow right on that leading edge. And then again, you can run cracks off there. Dusting over this section here, the lower part, because as you can imagine this part's stepped down. And then you can also run some of these cracks into the actual skull. The idea is to make it appear like it's a subtle representation of the skull, so that you have to kind of look twice and realise what's going on. A few more cracks from the edge of the canvas. So you can see how I use the template to start with, and then as I go further into the design, I'm doing a lot more freehand. Just also shading around these areas here. Chasing the cracks as well with the shadow from a distance, just to soften them off a bit too. So you can see I've got to really come back now with my white and bring it all back. So up nice and close. And with the white you want to build it up. It's going to take a little while to get it nice and bright. I can also start to highlight some of the opposite edges of the cracks. Make them appear more three-dimensional. I think using black now, I need to just shape it a bit more and deepen some of this. I think this is a bit too bright and it's losing the illusion. So I'm going to go back and darken this off as well. So go really deep in here. Obviously, the darker you go, the more of an illusion of depth it will create. Remember, I can still come back and re-highlight certain areas, but I think this needs to be a bit darker. And now just bringing out some of those white highlights again. So a bit of back and forth, but sometimes you just got to rework your artwork if it's not working the way you want it to. So I could leave it like this, but to be honest, I'm not entirely happy. This whole layer looks like it's set back, and then the eye sockets and that look like they're set back again. I personally think that the eye sockets and the nostril should be raised, so they should be similar to these bits of granite. So I'm going to show you how to fix this so that we've got these raised up, and we'll have a look at it then. So what I need to do is grab my template again, line it up. So this is the beauty of having the ability to flip it over like so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask off around it, and using some masking tape, I'm just going to mask off around the gaps within the template. It'll also help to hold it in place, and I'm not going to get overspray traveling underneath. I am going to mask off the teeth for the moment. See how the eye sockets and that look first once I do them. And then grabbing the white, I'm going to dust over this first. And then spatter just to build up a similar texture. And then spatter with the black. And again with the white. It's obviously harder to blend it in now. I think one more of each will do it. It's a bit of back and forward, something that I really didn't want to have to do. I thought it would be done, but at least you get to see how I fix something that I'm not really that happy with. Okay, so obviously now that these are raised, you're going to do the opposite. So you have a highlight on the top here. And a shadow down the bottom. I'm going to leave the teeth as they are and add in a shadow. You can see how handy these paper templates are. The rest I'll do freehand, but you may as well use them while you can. And they're easy enough to line up again as well, which is good. And now you can see the difference. I think that's a bit better. So now, again, freehanding the shadows. Working in some of those cracks again. Obviously trying to make these look raised. So bright white highlight now on this leading edge. And now a little bit of shading.